Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Microsoft Unboxed Pod. I'm your host today, Kareem, and I'm joined by
David Allen. This is number 44. We got a little surface news, a little AI news, and we hope the business folks out there have got your OneDrive accounts under control, and we'll mix it in with a few other things.
Yeah, we have a lot of news to talk about, so we're going to try and get you guys in and out because, as my co-host said, there's a bunch to talk about. Let's run through some of the headlines to let people know what they're in for this week. Microsoft hasn't, but there's been rumors in the industry about a smaller Surface device. We know that they have an event coming up next week where they're going to be probably talking about the Intel versions of their current lineup, but they may also tease in the future, probably sometime in June, a release of smaller devices. We'll get some details into that. We have Microsoft and OpenAI restructuring their deal, which is interesting because I thought their deal was for 10 years, but it seems like they've already 4 years into it. Have started fixing some stuff, and I don't know if this is an indication of what the FTC was warning about earlier this week, or I think late last week, or if they just feel that this is the time to kind of make some changes. Maybe OpenAI is seeing some larger fish out there, and Microsoft wants to make sure that they are committed. Kind of like a renewing your vows, so to speak, for the two companies. We'll also be talking about Microsoft cracking down on unlicensed OneDrive accounts. So, as David hinted, get your house in order. We'll be talking about AI-powered Windows search coming to dev channels. So Microsoft is still testing that out. That's still a thing. And I believe that this is going to be more welcomed than tabs and file in the File Explorer and Copilot in general. I think this is what people really want, is a AI-powered Windows search throughout the entire OS. Now we're talking about AI-powered. No, I said the same thing twice. Sorry about that. The NFL saying no to the use of Blue Sky. When you're probably scratching your head, like, what does that have to do with Microsoft? Not everything we cover is about Microsoft, but this is tangential. This is about companies making their way over to a new social media platform, a burgeoning one, I believe so, and kind of the pros and cons of that. We'll be talking about Google's detailing of Gemini and its AI features for the Pixel devices. And this is in relation to the news about Samsung, which we'll also kind of cover if we have time, about the release of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and Plus and the rest of the lineup. But basically, that Galaxy announcement was a unveiling of a bunch of new Gemini features. So following that, Google was like, hey, here's all the cool stuff we'll be able to do with Android pretty soon and our AI-powered assistant. We'll also be talking about a new controller. It's a special edition one for you Xbox fans out there. If you haven't collected one yourself, now is a good time to start. If you have some, here's to add to your collection. And if we have time, we'll be covering some other smaller headlines, which are still news within themselves. There was the Microsoft Xbox Developer Direct 2025. We got to see a new game. We got to see something be remastered. I think a lot of you will be interested in. We'll also be covering a story which is kind of troubling on many aspects, which is Microsoft's role in the Israeli military digital infrastructure in relation to the war in Palestine or Gaza, I believe. We'll be, if we have time, topping off with the Galaxy S25 coverage. With all that being said, I'm tired of talking. David, jump in, save the audience from my voice.
Well, I want to ask you a question. You brought up something interesting there. Do you use the tabs in your File Explorer?
Very rarely do I do it, and it's only when I need to transfer things back and forth. Now, I know as a power user, I should probably do it more, but I have been trained.
That's where I was going.
To believe that leaving the File Explorer open is a resource hog, and when you add more tabs, I feel like it's just draining that. Now, again, it is anecdotal. It probably has no basis in CPU reality, but I've always been trained to close it out once you're done with it. So that's my own.
See, I do the same thing. I get caught up in the old fashioned way where you want to copy something from your downloads folder to say your archive folder. I've got one File Explorer over here and another File Explorer over here. I've never gotten into those tabs, and not to get people off on the tab tangent here. It just crossed my mind that when you were going over that, everybody wanted tabs, but I've never heard anybody say they actually used them.
Yeah, well, because it's a visual disconnect, to be honest with you. Like you said,
Yeah.
when you visually see the two windows, you can see where the files are on an open plane. Now, it still functions the same way when you have a tab open. You can just click between the tabs and copy paste and drag and drop and all that kind of stuff just as well. But being able to see the two side by side is pretty awesome. So I think what they could do, I don't know how difficult of coding this would be, is to allow us to do what we do with browsers and separate the tabs and reconnect the tabs when necessary.
That's what's missing. That because I do a lot of file copies between, let's call them public folders and archives.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be nice to be able to drag those apart because I find myself doing that in Chrome and Edge quite a bit, detaching and reattaching. In fact, I do that when we're editing on the site sometimes. I will detach where I'm typing and, maybe reattach our source depending on how the rest of my windows are set up. And I find myself trying to do that in File Explorer and getting frustrated because I can't. Because when you put that tab up there, it starts to feel like a browser.
Yeah, and it should function like a browser. At least from my own personal experience.
Yes. Anyway, sorry, folks, for the little 3-minute tangent there. I had to kind of
get on. The tab people are out there. They're applauding. Hey! They wanted to hear that. They feel seen.
The tab friends, I'm there with you. I am your tab buddy. But we will jump into what is actually on our headline list. Let's see. What do we got first, buddy? The Surface devices.
Yes.
So, for everybody out there, we have always had let's see, it's 12.3, 12.4 inch Surface. Mm-hmm. And we know that there is an event on the 29th of this month, I believe, that is supposedly business related. And like you hinted to in the opening, it's going to be the Intel variants of the new Surfaces or the Surface laptop. And surprisingly, we keep hearing rumors, and we got this one from our friends over at Windows Central, that there's going to be a smaller Surface. And it would be based on the Snapdragon X processor, of course. It would be basically the same fit and finish of the existing Surface, just in a smaller version with a high refresh rate screen. And it should have a detachable keyboard and some type of pen input. And when you first read this, you go, why? Well, what has Microsoft not really been able to compete with that is really popular? The iPad. And when I read that, it all clicked for me because the Snapdragon chip is powerful. It's battery friendly. It conducts itself to good cooling habits. Microsoft can now put a smaller device together that is efficient, that is cool, that will fit better in the palm of your hand, that can be used for just media consumption. Now, there's two questions in my mind to this. One, what's the cost? Is the cost going to be different enough to make you not go buy the Surface Pro, or at least if you're an Apple user, make you think that you need to buy, I'm going to call it the Surface Mini. Maybe you need to buy the smaller Surface or the Surface Mini versus the iPad. And two, what has made the iPad sell very well? It's easy to use. Whether you like that interface or not, it's user friendly. So we've kind of made a loop back to what is Microsoft going to do to make Windows more user friendly on these touch devices. That would bode well for the big Surface. That would bode well for the smaller Surface. That would also bode well for the handhelds that keep popping up in the market. So Microsoft, while they're coming out with a smaller Surface here, good idea, I think. They say it's coming later this year. So if it's coming, later this year in the May, June timeframe, somebody somewhere has a prototype. So if it's really coming, good idea on the hardware side, but that kind of opens the door and kind of may force Microsoft's hand to fix the software for touch devices.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, they have all the R&D and the tooling already in these things. They're basically going to probably just swap out from the, for those of you who are listening, I was just showing a trailer of the Microsoft Surface Go 3. They'll probably swap out just the chipset, probably keep a lot of the hardware, which is the first generation kind of thing. But I think eventually they want to get down to a thinness sort of similar on the same path as the iPad, where it's just easier to hold in the hand. And until then, I think they're buying themselves a little bit of time, because right now Surface devices are heavy. Even the small 10.5-inch ones, a little heavier than a Galaxy Tab or a iPad. So you're not going to be holding and using it to your argument in your hand. So the UI doesn't necessarily need to change just yet, but you will be able to have the same sort of power in battery life. So if you are someone who travels, wants to create content, or uses something that's GPU heavy that is supported within the ARM architecture, because this is where they're heading for these things. I think they're getting CAD support pretty soon for these kind of things. So these are just going to be smaller devices. I don't know if they're necessarily going to replace the Go line. I think they should, if they're going to be the same size and just have ARM CPUs in them. But as far as a laptop's concerned, I believe it's similar sort of situation. I think, Zach, they're going to use premium more material. So I believe the Surface Laptop Go uses a plastic bottom, which is very noticeable.
It does.
The top is I think the top is still aluminum, but I think they're just going to be making these smaller ones, which will compete, depending on how they do the bezels, with like a Dell XPS, so to speak, where you get a 13-inch screen and a 12-inch frame, so to relatively speaking. So I'm interested to see how they price these things and how they market them. What are these really the on-the-go devices that they're going to be marketing, or are these just more like iPad Pro competitors as far as the power and efficiency go? Because these new Snapdragon chips, they're supposed to be doing pretty well. We'll see how the GPUs work in these. But I'm excited to see.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Or, we've got various levels of the Snapdragon chip. We have the Elite. I think there's the Plus, and isn't there a third, like just a regular Snapdragon chip? There's the Elite and the Plus, and I want to say there's one more. But either way, you mentioned something interesting there. The Surface Go, that has always been the smaller child of the Surface lineup, the least expensive, and as you mentioned, kind of not as polished as the others. Mm-hmm. So does this device kind of follow that Surface Go lineup and maybe get the Surface the Snapdragon Plus chip and say, hey, now you've got a PC down there in the $300 to $500 price range, and if you want the Surface Pro with Pro already in the name, it's baked in. So maybe this is the Surface Plus. Maybe the above is the Surface Pro.
Yeah, I mean, that's all speculation. That's all we got for this week so far. But I am under the impression that they're going to hint at this thing, tease whatever it is next week. Again, we know that the next week's announcement, for those of you paying attention or just now waking up, is for businesses mostly. This is the Intel, I don't know if this is the Lunar Lake or the generation after that. But these are Intel ones. They're supposed to be bringing more GPU performance. And so don't expect any visual changes. We're not getting any hardware. This is basically the Pro 11 Plus and the laptops or 7 Plus devices. These are Plus versions. We'll probably get, if we get any hardware refresh, but I doubt we will, any changes like that or any new announcements, probably later in June when they kind of do the consumer releases. So tease the mini devices, release them, and announce them in June. Moving on to our next story, though. We got Microsoft and OpenAI restructuring their deal. I said amid FTC scrutiny because I'm cynical. I'm just that kind of person. But interesting enough, for those of you who don't have the history on this, Microsoft and OpenAI have I believe a 10-year, 11-year deal worth, I I think initially about 10 or 11 billion. I think over the course of time, it's ballooned up more than that. But they are roughly 4 years, 5 years, 4 years into their deal. But they've strengthened their partnership, and it's going to last through 2030 now. Microsoft holds exclusive rights over OpenAI's intellectual property integrated into products like Copilot. That's kind of what they had before, but now they have exclusive rights to it. OpenAI is exclusive now to Azure, benefiting customers who are on the platform. They readjusted the revenue sharing agreement, which benefits both companies. I believe the way it was working before was that OpenAI was basically a slave to Microsoft. Like they went out and did all the work, and then Microsoft reaped all the benefits until they could pay back that initial $10 billion investment. Now I believe that they're actually doing more revenue sharing. Obviously, the revenue is going to weigh heavily in Microsoft's favor until that investment again is paid back. But at least OpenAI is starting to see a little bit of profits from that. The new arrangement allows OpenAI to use other cloud providers, mostly for research and model training, meaning that they can jump over to AWS if they need to, or Google's Cloud, or Salesforce if they want to be traders. But they could go out and expand, which again is great because Microsoft needs the language models to advance, and they may not have the capacity to host the demand that OpenAI needs, plus all their other cloud businesses and services. So it's a benefit for both of them. Microsoft and OpenAI have also partnered on a $500 billion project, which I believe the Trump administration just announced, which is an investment in AI infrastructure. We'll get to that in a second about my thoughts on that and kind of the negative sides of that. But it's supposed to create 100,000 new jobs. I'm dubious on that. The FTC also issued a report, I believe, last week. I don't know if we covered it. They were warning about Microsoft and OpenAI, not specifically, but they were mentioned several times in this report amongst other cloud service providers and tech companies getting into bed together about the negative ramifications of this. So it's interesting that this deal came out after Lina Khan was like, hey, you guys shouldn't be doing that. I think that's mostly the deal, is that OpenAI is now allowed to explore other opportunities with other people while bringing money into Microsoft. But I want to get your thoughts on this before I start talking about the warning that Lina Khan had. What do you think about the restructuring 4 years in to expand it for another?
I kind of think this has to happen because I have looked at AI over the course of, let's say, 3 years now of us really knowing that AI was a thing and AI was coming, and what we have very quickly grown into. We kind of went from the newborn stage, the infancy stage, and I think now we're in the childhood stage. And it's kind of like raising children, literally. That's why I use this comparison. When you have a child, mom and dad are at home with that child, and the first time that child goes and stays with grandma or grandpa or grandparents in a different location, it's a big change. And I think being able to use other cloud providers is kind of where we are in the grown-up process. Because if you want Amazon, for example, to consider using something of OpenAI's or something of Microsoft, then it only makes common sense to me that they would want the ability to host that on their own infrastructure. Or if OpenAI wants to work with Amazon to put OpenAI in some form or a model on Amazon products, it would only make sense that they are allowed to host that in the Amazon data centers. So I think Microsoft still has a firm hand on it until they get their $10+ billion money back. But I think this is smart. This is just part of the evolution of what we've got to go through. Now, what you're getting ready to lead to, we got a different administration in there. How's this administration going to take, the business moves here? What are they going to allow? And how does it possibly change the direction that we're going?
Yeah, I have two. I have a fork in the road for both of these topics. One, Lina Khan was investigating Microsoft, her FTC was investigating Microsoft's bundling of Azure. I don't know if that is going to proceed under this new administration, but I believe a lot of businesses are feeling more pro-business under Trump administration. So I feel like they feel like big mergers and further tightening their partnerships and agreements are on the table right now, which I think is why they kind of announced this deal. Because I believe, had they announced this under previous FTC administrations, this would be looked at heavily. This is to the report I mentioned last week. Lynn Khan, on her way out, was saying that we need to be weary of companies doing this because it isolates both the stack that people use as far as cloud service providers and AI now. So you're having less options if you are an OpenAI user because they are now tied to Microsoft's Azure versus being allowed to run OpenAI on a Google Cloud or something like that, if that is something that you want to do. Same thing with Gemini and the way that it's working. Like these things are becoming consolidated amongst essentially three big cloud service providers, which is AWS, Google, and Microsoft, with OpenAI tied to Microsoft heavily, even though they're still kind of flirting with Apple. But, we know OpenAI is basically a proxy for Microsoft. So I think that this deal is great for both companies. I am very weary of how this works out for the user at the end of the day. Because again, if Microsoft, and we know Microsoft's working on their small language models on their own, so that'll give us another option. But if OpenAI goes down, or if they have a bogus research model that comes out that is faulty, like Oro kind of is, that's going to affect every Windows user essentially. And we have no strategy, no options to do anything else with that. It's our AI is just down for the next model generation until they can fix it or address it. It isn't like Microsoft's gonna be able to pivot and be like, all right, well, we're gonna start using this one instead while this one gets fixed. We suffer until it's worked out. And that's not very great for the consumer. The last thing I have is that this is $500 billion going to be given to these companies who are part of this, project Stargate AI from the government. This is a subsidy from the government to help advance AI, which sounds great. It's promising 100,000 jobs. But what we know that AI is being pitched as is a productivity replacement, which translates into a job replacement, like things that people used to have tasks to do. Like if you were just a secretary or a personal assistant, and your job is to take meeting notes, organize the executives' flights and bus rides and meetings and conferences, and you got paid to do a job, to be on that job, to be on call, to address any of the things on the fly. You are now being replaced with AI. And again, I don't know if you're necessarily good, if that's a good solution, but at the end of the day, that's what these companies are trying to do. They're trying to save other companies money and task and hours with AI. So the government's giving these companies money to then eventually fire people when they get a chance. That's how I see it.
Well, I'm going to button my comment here, but I was thinking about something you said when you brought up executives. Say you're booking the CEO's flights or you're scheduling his meetings and you're making you're sending the emails, you're sending the invitations to the event or whatever, and you've got AI that's out there doing this. What part of that's missing? Can anybody tell me what part of that is missing that, for me at least, is very important when working with somebody or communicating with somebody? The personal touch. There's not going to be that personal touch, that personal emotion, that personal happy to see you, that personal, hey, I've got to pick my kid up at 3 p.m. Can we move that meeting to 3:30 so I can drop the kid off at the babysitter's? There's not going to be that. And maybe that's what some of these businesses want. They want things more cut and dry because it's more money focused of, getting tasks done and making money. I get that. But I feel like, kind of like yourself, we're taking jobs away. That's one problem. But I'm sorry, I've not talked to an AI bot yet or an AI language model that has any personality whatsoever.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. And I mean, we have digital assistants that we're still trying to train to have personality. With that being said, we're going to move on to Microsoft cracking down on unlicensed OneDrive accounts. What do you got on that one?
Well, this one was a little confusing to me at first until I understood exactly what an unlicensed account was. Because my thought was, well, when you sign somebody up for a OneDrive account, that is a license, correct? But come to find out, starting January 27th, which is next week, Microsoft is going to start cracking down on those unlicensed accounts and charging you. Let's see, it is 60 cents per gigabyte, providing 30-day access to an unlicensed account. Now, what is an unlicensed account? Let's use Microsoft Unboxed, our website, for example. Let's assume we had 10 content creators that were contributing to our site. Okay, one of those content creators leaves, we remove the license. But the way the Microsoft billing system works, you removed that user from your organization. If they still have data in a OneDrive account, that has now become an unlicensed account. So what Microsoft is saying is, admins, it's time to sit down, look at your organization, look at the people you have that have moved on. Maybe you've fired, maybe they moved on to different people or different positions in the company that required a different account. Sit down, look at these abandoned accounts. Make sure you get this data out if you want it. If not, there is supposed to be an option in your management dashboard to remove or delete that data. But Microsoft is going to charge you for access to that data starting on the 27th, which is Monday. So be prepared, admins, get your data out. And if it continues to stay there, you may have to get an Azure license to access that data. Now, something I noticed here, I saw no mention, unless I missed it, of Microsoft deleting data. Microsoft doesn't appear to be deleting this data no matter how old it is, but there will be a charge for this data. So admins, clean your stuff up.
Yeah, I got nothing to say to that. That all seems pretty straightforward. So good luck and Godspeed for those of you who have millions or hundreds or hundreds to hundreds of thousands of these accounts are kind of just laying around in organizations, because you have a long weekend of figuring out what's what and who's got what and what's important. With that being said, we're going to move on to another organizational kind of thing. We got Microsoft's AI-powered Windows search comes to the dev channel. I hinted this at the top that I believe that this is a feature that will be more popular with people than some of the newer things that they've come out with. And this is kind of hinting or going back to our discussions, last year about Windows recall. I think this is what people really want in Windows, which is a more powerful, organized, and competent search throughout the OS. This is, kind of what Mac OS does pretty well. This is what Google or Chrome OS does fairly well as well. Is being able to kind of know exactly what it is you're looking for, and then offer you all of the related content around that search. So just kind of a heads up overview. Windows Insiders on the dev channel with Copilot Plus PCs, and that's there are Intel ones that are considered or branded as Copilot Plus PCs, but I believe these ones are specific to the Qualcomm chips so far. Are getting a new feature which allows users to search locally saved files using natural language, and that's gradually rolling out. The AI-powered Windows search again is available for the dev channel. It's part of Insider Build, and if you're looking specifically for it, it's 26120.2992. Like I said, you can use natural language to search file formats that are supported, which are .txt, PDFs, docs, docs with a C, .rtf, PowerPoints, Excel forms, JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, BMPs, and ICOs, basically for images. So you can, essentially, if you needed to search for an image saying, hey, find me the woman in the woods image or whatever, and it should be able to surface a lot of your content that has women in woods areas. And again, it could be from images you saved in your downloads folder to then add to a PDF to then have a write-up as well on maybe a blog post or something like that. All three of those should come up in the search as options for you to kind of sort through. And again, Windows has had a Windows search, obviously, if you go to the start bar and kind of do it, but it's been muddled. It hasn't been very accurate. You've only been able really to kind of search your local files. You could add a indexing where you can search the web as well. But Microsoft is hopefully, with the machine learning and the power of Copilot, going to be able to produce something that I believe most people really want. What are your thoughts on that?
Couple things. One, thank you, Microsoft, if this comes to fruition like we think it is. This is kind of where I always thought, as you mentioned, Apple Spotlight fell a little short. We're finally getting something that may put the words Copilot AI in front of the consumer, that they're actually going to use and see benefit of, because I've always thought what was missing when I search a PC is being able to search the content inside a document. So for decades now, we have found ourselves using funny file names to be able to search that or remember what it might be later. And if you've got 3 or 4 documents there over time with similar names, we find ourselves spending that time opening each document. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. So hopefully AI can help find these. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it makes Windows better, yes, and makes Windows search better. There's probably going to be a question of security in here somewhere. So maybe when recall has been out, the security over recall has been kind of quiet over the last couple of months since Microsoft snuck it out on us right before Christmas. So that's been kind of quiet. Maybe that's a good sign. And at the end, Microsoft wants you to get a Copilot subscription. That's what they want. Google wants you to get a Gemini subscription. That's what pays those investors back that have made that investment. So if they do this right and it works well, and there's mentions and explanations to the general consumer of AI Copilot, it might convince the savvy consumer, what else can Copilot do? Now they have sold that Office subscription. Bingo. Mission accomplished.
Totally agree. We'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep you guys informed on any updates. I haven't gotten it personally, but I do have 2 devices on the dev channel. I believe it's kind of one of those A/B rollouts. Both are Snapdragon PCs, so hopefully I will get it soon. Maybe in the next Tuesday patch, maybe next Tuesday I'll get the release version of that. But for those who are interested, like I said, we'll keep you updated. Our next story is about the NFL. What do you got to say about the NFL? What are they doing or not doing?
Well, one thing I can promise you that is still going on in the NFL is the referees and the Chiefs still haven't worked out there.
Oh, conspiracy theories. Let's put our tinfoil hats on, ladies and gentlemen.
But kind of along those lines, Blue Sky, the kind of the third or fourth wheel in social media platforms here, or the X Twitter alternative that has popped up, the New England Patriots opened up a Blue Sky account. The NFL knew about it. The NFL was watching. The NFL dropped the hammer, told the Patriots to close the account. Now, why? Because the NFL has content deals with Meta. They have an NFL portal, is my understanding. I've never seen it. There's an NFL portal on X/Twitter. So for now, the NFL teams have been told, stay away from Blue Sky because we don't have a content agreement. Now, what is interesting to me is content agreements to me mean money paid. That's what it means. So is Blue Sky interested? I'm sure they are in getting an NFL content deal that would bring in. They're currently around 29 million users. I'm sure that would bring in several more million. Does Blue Sky have the financial backing yet to make these content deals? I understand why the NFL shut it down. We've got to stay with the people that are paying us, the people we are paying. I get it. But are content deals the next step for Blue Sky?
I'm going to be anecdotal with this and say probably not for a little bit. It's supposed to be a decentralized platform. I don't know how much money they're making without advertising. And, that was kind of Twitter's bread and butter was its advertising prior to the Musk regime. They had a lot of ways to get in advertising, to get in money, to then redistribute into other like things like you said, content deals and expanding the platform's video presence. I do know that Blue Sky is now introducing shared videos in sections like recommended videos and stuff like that. So they're getting more into video. I don't know if they have the servers or the money or the bandwidth to host this because Twitter's big game for the NFL. And again, it was relatively late in its development as well as it's getting this was being able to stream NFL games on Twitter. So if you were an NFL fan, you can go to Twitter and watch a game in your local area, things like that. So I don't know if they're going to get that deal anytime soon. I understand the business aspect of it, and I respect that. I also think that this is going to be a missing opportunity for NFL players in general. Like I get if the team, the organization doesn't have a deal in place, but to also ban your players who, again, are technically property of the team from communicating, they're going to be missing out because I think a lot of fans who may be dual purpose users currently are migrating eventually off of X. And that conversation that fans are having with their favorite players and vice versa is going to cease. The fan is going to move on and not be able to converse. And that'll be, again, a lost opportunity for the NFL, especially for a generation of viewers who were, aging into their sweet spot for the NFL. The NFL, isn't necessarily a playground for the young. It's for, the affluent, middle-aged, middle-class viewer. And these people that they should be, quote unquote, grooming, and not as a pejorative, but in a positive way, are going to be on these platforms like TikTok and Blue Sky, and they're going to miss out on that opportunity. Now, for how long? I don't know. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3. Maybe at some point they just say, all right, players are allowed to go, but teams can't be represented there. But I think as the platform grows, people will just learn to not seek NFL content there. And if the NBA is savvy enough or smart enough, there will be other opportunities. Maybe soccer, soccer in the U.S. finds an opportunity there, and sports thrives there. Tennis, golf, whatever. They fill that void for people who are looking for sports on the platform until the NFL decides it's worth it to be there, even if they don't get paid as much.
I think my buddy's calling me an old man.
I too am an old man. I would love for my to be on there. I have some thoughts about the way that Kyle Shanahan has ran that team into the ground. But that's for a different podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to
at least you're not a Panthers fan.
Are there even Panthers fans anymore?
With
that being said, we'll leave the Panthers fans to find themselves. Google is detailing some stuff about Gemini, and this is in the wake of the big Samsung announcement because Samsung basically came out and said, "Hey, here are all the Gemini features that we bundled them into our phone," and Google was like, "Hey, that's our stuff. We'd like to talk about it as well." What we're going to start seeing, again, this was announced a day after the big Samsung Unpacked event, but we are getting some improvements to Gemini Live, Circles, and Search. Now the features will be rolling out to Pixel 9 devices probably between the next month or two. So if you don't have it just yet, be patient. But like I said, we're be getting some improvements to Google Live, which allows users to interact using their voice. This was displayed heavily during the Samsung event, where you're basically just talking to your phone to navigate the phone, to navigate between apps, which is a big thing. We're getting cross app support, so you will not just be working with the inbox apps on devices, but you'll be able to start working with like maybe Uber or another social media app or something like that to pull information from. There'll be improvements for extensions. Google can now use multiple extensions simultaneously across services like Gmail, Google Maps, and Spotify and YouTube. There's also improvements to Google's deep research, which is available in Gemini Advanced subscribers. The feature browses hundreds of websites, generates a report of key findings, and provides links to original sources. So if you are a student and you need to cite certain things, you're writing reports or amongst people doing research, this is amazing because you'll be able to do it on your phone as well now. And then the big visual one that we all kind of see demoed. This is kind of like their version of Microsoft's Pen, where they just kept circling everything every time they wanted to display like, hey, you can use Pen on a tablet. Google's search Circle to Search, which is getting improvements. It'll start supporting information about places, trending images, unique objects, and more. You'll be able to kind of take action if there's phone numbers on the display, so you can circle it and click, dial, which is pretty awesome and amazing. Email addresses and URLs as well if they're displayed in the image. So if I don't know who still displays emails and images, I think it's all generic stuff because nobody wants to be doxxed or whatever, but you'll still be able to act on that. And again, URLs in the image. So if you screenshot something, send it to a friend, and you forgot to attach the email to it or whatever, or in the URL, they'll be able to click it on the image and go straight to what you're trying to share with them. Then lastly, there's Project Astro, which is coming to Pixel 9 series phones, enabling screen sharing and live video streaming, which I think is, again, these devices are getting pretty powerful. I'm glad that they're actually starting to use some of this power for things that you and I could use back and forth. What are your thoughts on Google? And I want to frame this because this is our talking point. Getting real world telemetry about how their AI should be used.
I'm glad to see it. I'm going to be a fan of this because we have spoke for months now on how AI needs to be more customer friendly, how AI needs to be out in front of customers. And in order to do that, you've got to get the data of what customers are doing with their devices, what customers want out of their devices, to formulate a product that will succeed and will not waste resources, such as Cortana, or the streaming service that Google had, Stadia. Let's be fair. Both of those were services that I'm not going to say nobody wanted, but I don't think there was enough data with them to know how to make them succeed. And I think that's a problem. And it was nice to see Samsung and Google working together, because this has always been my catch. Did I want a Pixel phone and do it the Google way, or did I want a Samsung phone and do it the Samsung way? And those ways up until now have been vastly different in some areas. And it's nice to see that there's some crossover. Google's getting data, Samsung's getting data, and we're putting this out there in front of consumers in ways that they want. Now, my concern here would be my nieces and nephews, and maybe I'm overreacting. Are we getting too easy, too dependent, to where we have to have these on our phones. We thought we had to have the virtual assistants. We found out real quick we didn't need Cortana. We have found out real quick that Siri needs improvements. So I don't want to see us in a place to where without language model XYZ, I can't do what I need to do. That is a concern as a consumer that I have. I think they need to stick in the idea of being my assistant, my helper, my research companion, and less of I'm a consumer. Oh, my phone will do that for me. My phone will pay my power bill. My phone will look this up. My phone will send that email. The human in me does not want to see other humans become that lazy.
I'm going to tell you, my friend, you might want to close your eyes for the future.
And you're right. You're right. I think I'm going to see something that I don't want to see. But and give me 15 seconds, folks. My attitude is you get up every day and you give it all you got. That's my, if you want to know me, that's my way of life. I'm the one that's up at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., finishing tasks that I felt like I should have finished that day. That's me. That's the way I function. And I don't want us to get to a point to where people get up and they just look at the list of stuff on their phone and they literally watch the phone check it off. I'm afraid that's what I'm going to see. That's not what I want to see.
Yeah, I mean, we have to still visualize and conceptualize that these are PCs in our hands. So the things that you would want your laptop or your desktop to, we wanted them to do back in the day, we're just now able to kind of do it handheld. So just keep that in mind when you're navigating your phone, that it is a very powerful PC that will eventually do a lot of what most of what your desktop does, if not more, depending on how you compute. With that being said, we're going to move on to our last topic on the docket, specifically, which is a new Xbox controller.
Well, let's see. We have the new Xbox controller. I'll tell you what, speaking of Kansas City Chiefs, boy, that thing is red. And it is, see, what was the title of this thing?
Pulse Cipher?
Yep, it was the Cipher. Sorry, folks. My notes got a little sideways here, so it took me a minute to get to it. The newest iteration is the Cipher Series Xbox controller, better known as the Pulse Cipher Special Edition. Now, what is neat about this one is it's transparent. You can see through it. You kind of get an idea of what the workings of a Xbox controller is. If you've ever been curious, personally, I think that's kind of cool. I've always been kind of curious as to how they set these things up, how they set the electronics, how they set the magnets for your thumbsticks and the D-pads to do what they're supposed to. Now, long story short, compatible with all your devices, Android, iOS, PC, and Xbox. So basically you're looking at Bluetooth, $74.99, and pre-orders are available now at your favorite Xbox retailer or Xbox.com or the Microsoft Store. Now, I know I didn't get too deep into that. To some people, an Xbox controller is an Xbox controller. Microsoft is just coming out with a different variety of look to sell a few. I thought it was pretty cool. It is part of a series of controllers. We had the Ghost Cipher before that. We had the Sky Cipher before that one. So Microsoft is kind of doing it the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle way. We've got it in a series. Go pre-order it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. I am a fan of Xbox controllers. I found a skin for one in particular. It's an X-Men skin. It was from the special edition Xbox that they offered for the X-Men 97 launch for that TV show. I found the skin, slapped it on my controller. I will try to attach a picture to it, maybe on the website or something like that. But I like being able to go to someone's place or see someone new, meet someone new that individualizes their gaming experience to whatever degree that's fun. If they have custom headphones, a customized chair, I think like you do, maybe they rock a steering wheel controller or a special ergonomic keyboard. It's just interesting to see people's personalities
Yes.
displayed through gaming. So, if you're a collector of controllers, here's another one to get you. If you are just starting and you're tired of the plain white one that they offer, the plain black one, here's something that you might be interested in. We're going to jump into a couple, unless you want to cap this off.
No, go ahead.
We got some headlines that we're going to kind of run through real quickly and then let you guys be about your day. The first one being the Xbox, the Best of the Xbox Developer Direct 2025. It came and went this week. I believe it was yesterday, day before yesterday. And we're just going to let you know kind of like what was covered in that, what to expect. This is the first of the year for Microsoft. They obviously have several more planned. But we were given trailers for Doom: The Dark Ages, which looks pretty awesome. I've never been a big Doom fan.
Come on now.
I understood the appeal of the game. I just wasn't a huge fan of the game. But this medieval version does have me very interested in it. You get basically a sci-fi dark fantasy world with intense combat, melee weapons. I knew Doom was heavy on the guns, but the melee weapons is going to be pretty cool in the skill tree. You'll get mechs and dragons. Dragons in a Doom game, I think, is going to be pretty awesome. It's supposed to launch May 15th of this year on multiple platforms. So who knows? Maybe Sony gets a version of this. Maybe the new Nintendo Switch gets a version of this. We were also given a trailer for Ninja Gaiden 4, and that's right, fourth version of this in the series. It's set in a near future Tokyo area. The protagonist is Yakumo. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's Yakumo and Ryu, legendary. And it's fast paced. It's a hack and slash combat, new techniques and new weapons, which is always kind of cool. Collaborating between Team Ninja and Platinum Games are the developers. That will be launching in the fall of this year. They don't have a specific date, but sometime I believe probably the November-ish time, right before holiday season, so you can stock up on that. We have Ninja Gaiden 2 as back. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. It's a remastered version, which is actually available now. I think that was made available right after the announcement, so you can go get that on the Xbox Game Pass, play anywhere. There's also South of Midnight, which they've shown before, but this one looks really cool. It's a third-person action adventure set in Southern Gothic area folklore. The protagonist is Hazel. She's gotten powers. It's a world of magic. That's supposed to be launching in April. It looks really cool. There was Clair Obscure Expedition 33. It's a turn-based RPG in the fantasy of the 19th century France. Features an innovative mechanism and gorgeous artwork. That'll be launching April 14th, 2025. So right after South of Midnight, if you have played and beaten that game, you can look forward to Clair Obscure. And then there's some other games that were supported on Xbox Play Anywhere. If you want more details of the games that were smaller but also announced and released, you can go check out our website for that. What are your thoughts on the Xbox Developer Showcase? Did you get a chance to see any of it?
Yes, I did. I thought that was a pretty good show for the type of show that is supposed to be. The second PC game I played, what I call a real PC game, was Doom. I remember it very specifically because my uncle had came to visit who was into computers at the time, and I was roughly 14, 15 years old, give or take. And he brought a copy of Wolfenstein and Doom on 3.5-inch floppies. And we literally sit in a bedroom and we loaded up Doom on those 3.5-inch floppies, and we typed in doom.exe, and we got the arrow keys on the keyboard, and we went at it. There was no customization back then. You just kind of went in and played. So it's good to see those titles come back. First of all, it's good to see them still popular. It's good to see that brand and that naming scheme still out there. The Ninja Gaiden, for me is also a winner because that game goes back a few editions and a few consoles and a few generations. So I will definitely be picking that up. I've just not had time to sit down and do that download yet, but I will be picking that one up. Um, Hardware aside, I think this is good to see content and good to see some of these other developers producing content that are not directly Microsoft produced. I hope we see these on the Switch too, as you mentioned. I hope we see them on other streaming platforms. And I'm going to say it, I hope we see them on PlayStation.
I think we're definitely going to see it on PlayStation. That is going to be where the money's at for a lot of these games going forward.
Let's, I'll stop here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's start seeing some of these licensing deals, some of these agreements.
Exactly.
Let's start seeing them and see how gamers take that. And then let's see where the industry takes us.
More games in more places. The next headline we got, and this is an interesting one. It's a story was uncovered about Microsoft's role in the Israeli military digital infrastructure. It was one that I wrote about on the site. It's basically saying that Microsoft Azure and Copilot were used heavily over the course of the last year or so. And for those of you who are aware of world events, Israel has been at war, or at least has been wreaking havoc in Palestine, specifically Gaza area. Through this report, which was a combination of information gathered by this outlet called Plus 972 magazine that worked with the Guardian and JobSite to get these conversations and documents obtained. Basically says again that the Israeli Defense Ministry relied on Microsoft's AI services in order to conduct their warfare. It's a little bit troubling, obviously, for obvious reasons, because not everything that has been done has been just against soldiers, but against civilians. I believe there was a quote that they had, which is, quote, an intelligence officer who served in the technological role in a unit 8200 in recent years and worked directly with Microsoft Azure employees before October 7th to deploy a surveillance team used to monitor Palestinians, told the outlet Plus 972 and Local Call that the company's developers became so embedded, again, this is Microsoft, that he referred to them as people who were already working with the unit as if they were soldiers. This has brought up consternation, obviously, within Microsoft employees who are protesting this because they don't want to see their work and their products being used for military purposes, especially in warfare, active warfare. So we'll keep an eye on this story, see if the protests within the Microsoft employees goes anywhere, if there's any way to change the way that these things are working, if these deals get reevaluated at the, during the ceasefire that we have in place. Maybe Microsoft figures out a way to pull back on some of that. But again, they are not the only ones involved in this. The story does mention AWS's involvement and as well as Google. So if you're interested in finding out, how much was spent, how much time, how many man hours of support that Microsoft's offered this particular defense ministry, go check out the write-up on the website. Again, it's on there. It should be, maybe we'll keep it as a featured for a little bit. But what are your thoughts on this before we move on about Microsoft and war?
This is trouble. It troubles me that, it bugs me, man. It does, that AI was used in war and could have possibly been used to harm civilians. I get it. Unfortunately, war is a product of a society. The U.S. has been in wars. Other countries have been in wars. Other countries have been in war with the U.S. But I kind of have a border there for myself and my sanity when technology is used against innocent humans. I get that there's enemies out there that want to harm the United States and want to harm innocent people. When technology is used to stop that by whatever means necessary, I'm all for it. But when technology is used to harm someone innocent or not, that's kind of where I have to draw a personal line in the dirt.
Yeah. The details of the story are a bit troubling, just by the amount of support that Microsoft's actively offering. It's one thing to be like, hey, we gave them Copilot and they used it to conduct their war. But to then work alongside them this entire year and offer them extraordinary support, access to engineers that were so embedded. Again, these are based on the soldiers saying that they thought the Microsoft employees were actual soldiers as well. That's another level. That is something that should hopefully be reevaluated going forward in the future. I don't know. Again, these are contracts that were laid out in the past before the war started. I'm sure they want to fulfill their engagements and agreements. Microsoft benefits heavily from the surveillance aspects that the Israeli military has conducted. They bring it back, and this is a lot of stuff, that technology that they've used in the HoloLens and things like that, as far as facial recognition, things like that. So it's been a two-way street, definitely. But I'm hoping going forward, after we've seen the destruction, that there's a bit of divestment with Microsoft and the Israeli military and any other military that's going to be using these weapons, so to speak, that they set up some ethical boundaries as far as what's going to be used for. I know it's a pipe dream, but I'm at least hoping they make a public-facing acknowledgement of this going forward, that, hey, we're going to try and make sure that AI isn't used to kill or harm civilians. And if it is, then maybe we pull our support. We can't necessarily pull our technology. We can't uncork or cork the genie or whatever, but we can at least not actively further harm. So that's my thoughts on that. We're trying to move on to a more hopeful topic as we close this out, which is Samsung announcing its S25 series. They are finally here. The rounded corners are abound. They are rounded everything. The S24 FE was the most recent indication that we're going to get rounded, but they did it for the Ultra now finally, so it's not going to be digging in your hand. It's a little thinner. But aside from the minor UI refreshes, the biggest thing, the thing that took center stage, was Google Gemini. And not just Samsung AI, but specifically Google Gemini. I think they've given up. They've given up on Samsung AI to a certain degree. They might brand it as that, but the thing that we used to know, remember at Bixby?
Oh man, Bixby. Oh boy.
Yeah.
That goes
Say goodbye to
that,
Bixby. He haunts the hallways somewhere, but he is no longer he is no longer a paying resident in the home of Samsung. You can find it somewhere on the operating system, but it is now Google Gemini's show. And some of the things that we got is, again, we have the integration of all the features that I just mentioned to you earlier about what should be showing on the Pixel. They'll be there first day on these Samsung 25 devices. If you're a Pixel owner, you might be a little perturbed that you have to wait in order to get those from the next Android update. But they also did some design changes, like I said, which is rounding the corners, making it a little thinner. They also use a new battery tech, which should give you another hour, and that's in conjunction with an improved Snapdragon chip, which is apparently the most powerful thing out there. It's beating out all the Exynos and the MediaTek and all the other mobile chips out there. They have made a camera upgrade. They moved the 12 megapixel ultra wide into a 50, which should help with resuming and cropping. They've made some changes to the video algorithms to make it a little more impressive. They've allowed people to shoot in what is that format called? It's a format that Apple uses a lot, but I forget. But they're allowed to shoot
ProRes.
Yeah, that's what they call it, but it's a general term that most camera
raw footage. Is it raw footage?
Not raw, but it's a specific term that most camera people use. That Apple spun it into ProRes, but it's like I'll think of it as I'm talking. But they allowed people to shoot in that. The S Pen has lost Bluetooth capability, so you'll only now be able to scroll with it by actually touching the device. So those of you who didn't want to get your S Pen tips dirty, I guess. One UI 7.0 is supposed to be this big overhaul change as far as the animations are concerned, and the UI and the UX be a little bit more fluid. They've also put this new, I think it's called Now, which is their bottom facing version of the dynamic island, which will only support apps that have tracking on them. So if it's like you're tracking your Uber Eats or your Uber or your flights or something like that, things that are in motion, we checked at the bottom. I think they're going to get more support for that as well. And I believe the pre-orders started yesterday, but they'll be shipping February 7th. If you're interested in that, what do you think about the S lineup? I know you watched the show with me.
Yes, I was a little bit excited over this S lineup. Not necessarily the physical aspect of it. It was interesting to see that we're down to 2 nanometers on the Snapdragon based CPU in there. So our efficiency and power should start getting better. And we kind of know that we're going to get a camera bump in specs each year because, the assumption is that everybody's a content creator and everybody's filming and everybody's snapping photos of every part of their life. But for me, and kind of the unexpected was the software side. That converge of Google and Samsung. Because going into this, I expected Samsung to say, okay, remember that AI we launched last year and we told you was free to 2025. Here's another subscription fee. Or you can upgrade our phone, you can get another year, and we have improved Samsung AI, and here you go. That's not quite what we got. That's kind of what I expected. It's nice to see, and I've always wondered why this took this long to happen, basically 25 versions of a phone. Why did it take so long for Google and Samsung to finally get together and make these devices this way? Because Google makes stock Android devices. They're not very frilly. They don't have the extra presentation sometimes that the Samsung devices do. Samsung makes the One UI, which is what I call the dress up of Google, which makes people like the Samsung phones as their Google devices maybe a little better. So I've always wondered why they just didn't do this to begin with. I think this is what we need here. We've got, because there's always been, my brother has a Pixel. He's talked about features the Samsung doesn't have. The Samsung has talked about features that he doesn't have, but yet they run the same operating system. So I'm happy to see some of these things get closer together. I would be interested for the first time in actually purchasing a new Samsung phone and retiring Mr. 2016, 2017 Samsung Galaxy Note 10. So
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen,
excited.
we're going to start a GoFundMe for David so that he can get himself a new phone because this is embarrassing. Okay? I'm embarrassed to be associated with this gentleman. For a man of tech, he keeps very simple means. Let's all get together and help him, welcome him to the future. How about that?
That would be great.
With that being said, yeah. With that being said, we want to thank you for joining us for another week of news. We want to give you guys some insight into what's happening outside of our podcast. We have updated our website. We're looking to give you guys more content. We are looking to kind of give our website, this podcast, a bit of a personality. We'll be talking, more about gaming in the weeks and months and years to come. We may even dedicate a section towards the end of this podcast where we talk about weekend gaming. So if you guys have suggestions on topics, games that you're playing, things that are happening in the gaming community that you would like us to cover, please, comment or reach out to us on social media, on the website, in the comments below this podcast itself. Where can people find you if they want to offer that information?
David PAJ 1978. That is mainly Blue Sky, to be honest. That there is a thread account, David PAJ 1978 again. And there is a Twitter/X account that I do check just to make sure there's nothing too crazy going on over there that I don't know about. But Blue Sky is the place to find me and to follow up on your comment. I would like to know from gamers, what are they playing? And I would be glad to share, weekly what I played that week or what I'm looking forward to playing that weekend, since we do these recordings on a Friday and we do get a lot of Friday afternoon and weekend listeners. What are you playing on the weekend? That's what I want to know.
You can find me at Happy Hulk on Blue Sky as well. Again, similar to David, that is where I am for the most part. I am trying to wean myself off of the dependence on meta set platforms, but you could find me at Kareem Anderson on Threads or Instagram when I do pop in and out of there. I have a TikTok, but I basically use it to watch other people do stuff, so I don't communicate very much or well on that platform. I have abandoned X altogether, so don't look for me there. Uh, but we again, I read the comments. You can put some down in on this video, and we'll reach out back out to you. Visit the website, offer us suggestions. We have a contact us page on the news site. You can again just write an email like, "Hey, I'd like you guys to cover." More stuff about Phil Spencer and what's happening with that. The other thing we're going to start trying to do is just asking each other more conversation. If you want to get to know us, what we're into as far as things outside of Microsoft, so to speak. What are you reading? What are you watching? What kind of foods did you happen to come across this week that you were interested in sharing with our readers? We'll give you a little bit more of us. But with that being said, you go out, live your life, come back and give us some of your experiences. We're going to do the same, and we will all meet up again next week. Everything we do. Enjoy yourselves and be safe. Talk to you guys again soon.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Azure skies where spirits fall. In the cloud we stand tall.